You've been working on your novel for 6 months. Every morning, you sit down with your coffee, open the laptop, and stare at the screen. You're going to write today. You have to. You've read all the advice. Show up every day. Treat it like a job. Push through resistance. So you sit there forcing words onto the page. And they're terrible, lifeless. The more you push, the worse it gets. That's what we're talking about today. The way trying too hard kills the very thing you're trying to create. Maybe it's your YouTube channel. You've been grinding for months, scripting, filming, editing, posting. You've watched every tutorial, studied the algorithm, optimized your thumbnails. You're doing everything right. But the videos feel flat. The passion that made you start has been replaced by this desperate need to make it work. You're not creating anymore. You're straining. Or maybe it's someone you're trying to impress. A new romantic interest, maybe. Or a potential mentor. You're texting them carefully crafted messages, trying to say the right thing, be the right amount of interesting, but not too eager. You're monitoring every interaction, every response time, and you can feel them pulling away. The harder you try, the more they retreat. Or it's your business. You're hustling 12 hours a day. Every podcast says you need to outwork everyone, so you do. You're networking, cold calling, posting on LinkedIn, optimizing your funnel. But somehow, the desperation is starting to seep through. Potential clients can smell it. Things that used to flow naturally now feel forced. You're trying so hard that you've created a wall between you and the thing you want. We live in a culture that worships effort, grinding, hustle culture, the idea that if something isn't working, you just need to try harder, push more, sleep less, optimize better. And look, effort matters. I'm not saying it doesn't. You want to build muscle? You need to consistently lift. You want to learn Spanish? You need to show up and practice. But even there, even with things that require consistent effort, there's a point where more effort stops helping. Your muscles don't grow in the gym. They grow during rest. Your brain doesn't learn a language just by grinding through flashcards for 8 hours straight. It needs breaks. It needs to wander. Sometimes a change is as good as a rest, going from verb conjugations to watching a show in Spanish, from deliberate practice to just living with the language for a bit. But there's a whole category of things where the try harder approach actively backfires from the start. Creative work, authentic connection, natural charisma, problem-solving insight. These things require a certain looseness, a kind of playfulness. They need space to emerge, and when you squeeze too hard, you crush them. Think about the writer who's so focused on writing a bestseller that they can't write anything authentic. The entrepreneur so desperate to succeed that every conversation feels like a pitch. The person so determined to make someone like them that they become a performance instead of a person. The trying becomes the obstacle. The Taoists saw this thousands of years ago. They had a concept called Wu Wei, effortless action. Not doing nothing, but acting without force, without striving. There's a famous story in the Zhuangzi about a swimmer. A man named Confucius sees someone swimming in a dangerous waterfall, the kind of rapids that would drown most people. He's sure the man is trying to kill himself, so he runs to save him. But the swimmer emerges downstream, perfectly fine, singing and walking along the bank with his hair flowing. "How do you survive those waters?" Confucius asks. The swimmer says, "I enter with the inflow and emerge with the outflow. I follow the way of the water and do not impose my own will upon it. That is how I survive." He doesn't fight the current. He doesn't try to swim against it or control it. He moves with it. Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching, put it even more directly. The softest things in the world overcome the hardest things in the world. Water doesn't try to move mountains. It just flows. And over time, it carves canyons. The Buddhists understood this too. There's a story about the Buddha teaching a student named Sona. who was a musician before he became a monk. Sona was practicing meditation with such intensity that his feet started bleeding. He was trying so hard to become enlightened that he was destroying himself in the process. The Buddha asked him, "When you were a musician, how did you tune your lute? If the strings were too loose, would it play well?" "No," Sona said. "And if the strings were too tight?" "They would break. So how did you tune it?" "To the middle. Not too tight, not too loose." The Buddha smiled. "It's the same with practice. If you strain, you'll break. If you're too lax, nothing happens. Find the middle." And in Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor, philosopher, guy who had every reason to be stressed, wrote in his journal about not forcing things. "Do not disturb yourself by picturing your life as a whole," he wrote. "Do not let your thoughts at once embrace all the various troubles which you may expect to befall you, but on every occasion ask yourself, what is there in this which is intolerable and past bearing?" He also compared good work to a vine producing grapes. The vine doesn't announce what it's doing. It doesn't strain and sweat and make a show of effort. It just does what it does naturally. The grapes come from the doing, not from the anxiety about the doing. Modern psychology has documented this extensively. There's research on what happens when you give people creative tasks under pressure versus when they feel relaxed and playful. Pressure narrows focus. It activates threat detection systems in your brain. The amygdala lights up. Cortisol floods your system. You become rigid, repetitive. You go for the obvious solution instead of the interesting one. But when you're relaxed, when you're not forcing it, your mind enters what's called diffuse mode. This is when your brain makes unexpected connections, pulls together ideas from different domains. That's where creativity actually lives, in the periphery, not in the spotlight of desperate focus. There's also research on dating and social connection. When people are trying too hard to be liked, they display what psychologists call excessive self-monitoring. They're so focused on managing the impression they're making that they're not actually present. They're running a constant internal simulation. How am I coming across? Was that funny? Should I have said that? And people can sense it. It creates discomfort, distance. Ironically, the less you try to be liked, the more likable you become. The same thing happens with choking under pressure in sports and performance. When you're overthinking, when you're trying to consciously control things that should be automatic, you get worse. Your golf swing falls apart. Your free throw misses. The trying interferes with the doing. So what do you actually do when you catch yourself in this trap? First, you notice it. That's the whole game. You're sitting at your computer, grinding on your YouTube script, and it's not flowing. You're forcing every sentence. Stop for a second. Notice, I'm trying too hard right now. Feel where that lives in your body. Usually it's tension in your chest, your jaw, your shoulders, that physical clenching. And then, and this is the part that feels counterintuitive, you back off. Not forever, not giving up. Just for now, you release the grip. For the writer with the block, close the laptop, go for a walk. Not a productive walk where you're trying to think through your plot. Just a walk. Look at trees, listen to sounds. Let your mind wander wherever it wants. Or read something you love, not for research, just for pleasure. Watch a movie. Have a conversation about something that has nothing to do with your book. The writer Anne Lamott talks about taking what she calls thinking walks. But the trick is, you're not trying to think. You're just walking, and ideas show up on their own. The solution to your plot problem appears while you're looking at a dog in the park. The character's voice comes back when you're making dinner. For the YouTube creator, stop optimizing for a week. Make something just for the fun of it. Something that would never perform well. Something weird or personal or experimental. A video that's 2 minutes long instead of 8. Something you'd never put a thumbnail on. Remember why you wanted to do this in the first place. It wasn't to beat the algorithm. That came later, after the joy turned into a job. Go back to the joy part, even if just for one video, for the person trying to impress someone. Send a message that's not carefully crafted. Stop writing and rewriting. Just say what you actually want to say. Let yourself be boring. Let there be silence. If they ask how you are, instead of curating the perfect, interesting response, just tell them. Better yet, stop texting for a day. Do something else. Go see other friends. Work on a project that has nothing to do with this person. The best thing you can do when you're trying too hard to make someone like you is to remind yourself that your life exists beyond them. For the entrepreneur grinding, take a day off, a real day off, not a work from the coffee shop instead of the office day. Don't check email, don't network, do something that has nothing to do with your business. Go to a museum, cook an elaborate meal, play a game. I know someone who was burning out on his startup. He took a weekend and built furniture, just went to Home Depot, bought wood, made a bookshelf, completely unrelated to his work. When he came back Monday, a solution to the problem he'd been forcing for 3 weeks was obvious. He wasn't trying to solve it. That was the point. The general principle: when you notice you're forcing, shift your attention to something else. Not as a strategy to solve the problem. That's still trying too hard. Just shift, because the forcing isn't working. Sometimes a change is as good as a rest, and often the thing you want comes back on its own when you stop chasing it. There's a musician I know who spent 2 years trying to write his breakthrough album. He'd wake up every day, go to the studio, and force himself to create. He had a vision of what it should sound like. He knew it needed to be important, significant, and everything he made sounded derivative and dead. Finally, broke and exhausted, he gave up, took a job at a coffee shop, stopped trying to be a serious artist, and one day, on his break, just messing around on his phone, he recorded a silly little voice memo. A stupid idea that made him laugh. That turned into a song. That turned into an album. That actually worked. Not because he tried harder, but because he finally stopped trying to control what it needed to be. Or think about job interviews. The person who's desperate for the job, who needs it to work, who's trying so hard to say all the right things, they usually don't get it. There's a stiffness, an anxiety that comes through. But the person who's already got another option, who's relaxed, who's just having a conversation, they're more likely to connect. The same person, the same qualifications, but different energy. Or dating. I've watched friends sabotage relationships because they wanted it too much, too fast. They were already planning the future, already attached to how it should unfold. Every text became loaded with meaning. Every interaction was a test. And the other person felt it. The weight of those expectations. The grip of that need. What could have been natural became suffocating. The paradox is this: the things you want most desperately often require you to hold them lightly, not because you don't care, but because caring too tightly crushes them. This isn't about not trying. It's about learning the difference between effort and force, between working and strangling, between wanting and grasping. You'll keep forgetting this. You'll catch yourself gripping too hard, trying too much, forcing what should flow. And when you notice, you'll practice letting go, not giving up, just loosening your grip, seeing what happens when you stop squeezing, not yet still, but learning slowly that sometimes the way forward is to stop pushing quite so hard. If this resonated, come back tomorrow. We'll be here.